Welcome to Fireside Knicks. My name is Alex, your host for today, and I want to talk about this Knicks versus Orlando Magic game. Of course, the Knicks fell in a pretty surprising and disappointing way to Orlando at home after demolishing them. And I think this is a pretty good wake-up call for the Knicks that says to them, you need to play as a team, you need to play together, and you can't be forcing shots. Julius Randle, the stat line might look decent. It might look like he put up 30 points, but at the end of the day, he had a pretty poor game. And I think that, he turned the ball over a couple times. He was trying to force things on his own. And that was a pretty bad indication to me that the team, wasn't playing together. The chemistry might have not been there. They weren't moving the ball. While they looked a little sluggish, maybe the early season stamina woes are kind of taking advantage of them. But Julius Randle shot 2 of 10 from three-point range, 20%, and only 8 of 24 from the field. But he did score 30 points, of course, 16 rebounds, which is a great number. Had a double-double, but at the end of the day, just not really great efficiency shooting, but he did shoot 12 of 14 from the free throw line as well. So, when I'm looking at Randall, I think this is just an off game for him. He's an all-star. He's a fantastic player. I think that he probably just got a little bit too much in his head. He tried to do too much on his own, but I think he's still getting his head wrapped around the idea that he has players that can help him out now. Evan Fournier, Kemba Walker, these guys can help him. RJ Barrett, another guy who started off the game really strong on the pick and roll. I was really impressed with him early. He kind of struggled later on, but the team as a whole really did not shoot well from range today. And I think, or rather last night against Orlando. And that was a big indication of just an off night. They shot 27% from range, and that was a pretty bad number after shooting almost 40% or over 40% in the last game against Orlando. And that's kind of what the Knicks, I don't want that to become their MO though. I don't want the Knicks to be a team that lives and dies by the three-pointer. I want them to also have the ability to play bully ball, to go in the paint and dominate. I think Julius Randle tried to get that going, but they just couldn't get it done. Terrence Ross for Orlando, credit to him, man, putting up 22 points in the fourth quarter, kicking some butt. He's a veteran. He's a guy who's pretty much a prolific scorer, really, really quality player there off the bench for them. And he showed up when he needed him most. And Cole Anthony, coming off the bench, really starting with 29 points, 16 rebounds for a point guard is just phenomenal. Shot 5 of 9 from 3-point range. The defense for the Knicks was pretty bad as a whole. I was not really impressed with the way that they were transitioning and communicating. If there was any singular player that really stood out to me, it was Mitchell Robinson. Had a pretty solid game. A couple of nice putback dunks. He showed off that muscle. Really physical in the paint. He finished with 10 rebounds, a double-double himself. He looks really good. 6 personal fouls, though he got knocked out. That was the first time in a while since he's been knocked out of a game due to foul trouble. He was the only starter with a positive plus-minus. But looking at this Knicks team right now, I think that, when we evaluate them, this was a nice punch in the mouth for them. This was a nice wake-up call that, Julius Randle, if he's not playing well, somebody else has to step up, whether it's Fournier. Kemba Walker was really more or less benched in the fourth quarter. He wasn't doing much. He played 19 minutes. He shot 50% from the field. I mean, it could have just been a load management type of reality, but I think his defense was lacking, and Tom Thibodeau realized that. I do think he was sat not because of load management, but rather because of his defensive deficiencies, which is why Derrick Rose is put in. He played 29 minutes. He shot 9 of 16 from the field, 5 of 8 from three-pointer. This guy, Derrick Rose, man, he's just the gift that keeps on giving. I freaking love Derrick Rose. 23 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds. Man, he had 2 steals. This guy does it all for the Knicks. He looked fast. He looked spry and quick. I really was impressed by Derrick Rose. I think that he's going to be a very good player for us this year, and he's going to be a catalyst, especially when Kemba Walker has an off day. I think that the Knicks just didn't have enough players playing well. I think pretty much Mitchell Robinson and Derrick Rose were the only guys that really stood out to me that really were on their game against Orlando at home. But this is a wake-up call, man. Orlando's a bad team, right? This is the first time they scored over 100 points all year. Obviously only 3 games, so not much of a sample size there, but the first time they scored over 100 points, and I think the Knicks defense and Tom Thibodeau specifically is going to be disappointed. Thibodeau did say after the game, when you're taking shortcuts, nothing good can happen. He wants these guys to be playing elite basketball, elite defense. Their defensive rating was pretty solid, top 10 after the first Orlando game. Now it's definitely in the middle range of the league, but I will say I don't expect this to be an every night occurrence. I think that they're kind of still easing their way into the season. I think that this is a good wake up call for them to say, we got to be playing balls to the wall all season long. We can't skip a beat. We can't miss a game. I do think there is stamina issues. Not having Nerlens Noel is a big loss. That really forces Tom Thibodeau to use that more of that Toppin and Julius Randle combo, which I like. But Toppin obviously did not have the best game. He shot 1 for 4 from the field. He missed all 3 of his 3-point attempts and only had 2 points. His defensive positioning and movement was pretty lackluster. And Orlando took advantage, man. The Knicks played bad defense. And like that's where Tom Thibodeau is going to freak out. He's going to punish his teams. There's going to be consequences for not playing good defense. And another guy who really disappointed me was Immanuel Quickley. He didn't even score in 12 minutes. He had 4 shooting attempts. He missed all 2 of his 3-point attempts. He had 2 rebounds and an assist. He did not look good. His defense was also pretty poor. Quickly, I don't want to say he's falling out of favor with Tom Thibodeau, but he's definitely going to stop getting as many minutes if he continues to play bad defense and is not hitting his shots. They don't clearly Tom Thibodeau does not trust him at this point in time to be kind of an offensive weapon and come off the bench and really curate some point production. But I don't think it's going to last. I think he'll bounce back and he'll be just fine. He's a hard worker. I love the kid. Manuel Quickley's awesome. And I think he's going to be just fine, and he'll pick it up. It's just maybe some early season woes going into his sophomore season, after a really great rookie year. Maybe just expectations. He's in his own head. It's confidence. A lot of times shooting is just confidence. And I think he's really just in his own head and not thinking about it too much. But we might see a little bit more of Quentin Grimes if that is the case. If Quickley does lose a little bit of minutes, because Tom Thibodeau's like, you know what, let's take some pressure off of him. We'll create some natural competition between him and Quentin Grimes. Grimes is a better defender, a very aggressive player, pretty solid shooter. Didn't get any minutes against Orlando, but I would not be surprised to see Grimes get some minutes in the earlier portion of this season, especially if Quickley continues to miss shots. Altogether, though, man, just a really bad 3-point shooting game. I mean, the free throws, 68%, another bad free throw shooting game as well. They didn't get much to the line except for Randall, who had 12 of 14. Nobody else got to the line more than 6 times or 5 times. The only other guy, Mitchell Robinson, hit 2 for 5. But altogether, I was impressed by RJ Barrett early on. Missed a lot of 3-point attempts, only hit 1 for 7. Evan Fournier didn't really look that great either. 26 minutes, only contributed 8 points. But you know what? Mitchell Robinson impressed me. I was really, really excited to see him. That little tweak of that ankle when the Orlando Magic player stepped on his foot or really ran into that right knee. That was a huge scare. I was absolutely terrified by that. But at the end of the day, he's fine. He came back. He's going to be okay. Maybe he's a little bit sore today. Maybe they limit his minutes against Philadelphia, but that's a big contest too. Philadelphia is no joke. Obviously, the Ben Simmons debacle is still ongoing, but they've won 2 of their last 3 games. The only game they lost was to the Brooklyn Nets. But they just beat up the Thunder. They haven't scored any less than 109 points, and the Knicks are going to have to be on top of their offensive game if they're going to win this one, And Philadelphia, pretty solid team there. I mean, Seth Curry, 28 points as a primary shooting guard. Joel Embiid, of course, 22 points there, another stud. Their 3-point shooting is pretty solid. They shot 41.5% against Oklahoma, and they held Oklahoma to 25.8% shooting from 3. So we'll see. The Knicks have enough talent to beat teams like this. There's no question there. I think that they play up to their competition, and they just have to be careful of not playing down to their competition. I think that's kind of what happened against Orlando. They just played down to them. They're very capable of beating a team like that. Terrence Ross and Cole Anthony really just stepped up and had great games. So, credit to them. But I think the Knicks will be fine. They'll bounce back. They're going to be competitive on Tuesday night against the Philadelphia 76ers. But definitely a punch in the mouth, something to be aware of. I think they're gonna be pretty pissed off after this game, especially being beat up at home in front of their own crowd. So guys, hope you enjoyed this episode of Fireside Knicks. Just taking a look at some guys, taking a look at some players, the stat sheet, and really what the Knicks kind of underwent in this game and how they can bounce back. But I would like to see a little bit of Quentin Grimes. I think he's got some defensive prowess. I think he's aggressive, and I like his style of play. Maybe even if he gets 5 or 6 minutes on a night, maybe in more defensive scenarios, I think he can be a pretty solid player. I'd like to see him get some action. Of course, they have a lot of mouths to feed with such a deep team, but I'm pretty excited to see what they can accomplish in the future, my friends. Make sure to subscribe below on YouTube. Really appreciate all the love, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.